change the,
All right, good afternoon. It is 2:10 p.m. We are meeting with ECAT for wage opener. My name is Nikki Powell, HR Director.
hey Nikki, you're not on there.
Go ahead, Deb.
Oh, Thaddeus Davenport, interim mass transit director.
Debbie Bowers, Assistant County Administrator.
I guess we're over here to meet Michael Lowry, president of the ATU 1395, and bus operator, ECAT.
Elaine Williams, ATU Financial Secretary of Operator.
Michael Brooks, Chief Shop Stewardess, Bus Operator.
And Kristen Miller with the County Attorney's Office.
So, you sent me over something that I've reviewed, and I have to ask you, is this
What did I send you?
Well, what you sent me was a bargaining unit list with their existing wage rates and their date of hire,
Okay, yes.
with their classifications. And at the bottom of it, it says 3% equals $83,121. And then it has below that, it has the progressions that are built in for all the bargaining unit employees at ECAT, with one of them being the part-timers / trolley operators, and the full-time operators with, off to the right, like an adjusted progression. Is that correct?
You should have only received the wages for the, so that was probably added inadvertently to there. That wage cannot be accommodated because money's not there.
So, when
So
you,
that's what I was working with. If you're seeing a proposed, that is what I was trying to work towards.
so for instance, like
But
the,
that's not that was not meant to be a proposal. Your request was
what's
just
not
for
the
the
proposal?
wages.
The 3% or the progression or both?
The 3% is what is budgeted
Right.
by the county. So that is the dollar amount that I'm working with. So that $83,000, that's what I'm working with to have created a proposal.
So the progression that's listed below is not something that you're currently offering?
No,
For instance, I'm just making sure, the starting wage of a bus operator from 1882 to 1997, that's not being offered.
that's not even on the one that I have.
This came from public records to me.
So
I don't know who created this document.
So it sounds like it's a created document and not an actual report. So I'll have to get with my department and find out why they added a created document and not a report. The report that you requested was wages, and that's what should have been attached. I have a file that I've been working on that I've had wrote down multiple proposals that I have tried to get to, but with $83,000, they can't do it.
So your position is that the progression, for instance, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to tell where it came from.
So your position is the existing progression of 1882 for a bus operator is the starting rate you're gonna maintain,
As of right now, yes.
with a top out of 2387 after, between 49 and 60 months.
As of right now,
Six-
yes.
60 plus months, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I had,
That changes the little thought process here for us, okay?
so that was why I did in the email, or I thought in the email that I replied to you, I told you the dollar figure that I was working with, so that if you wanted to come up with your own proposal, we could cost it out. But that dollar figure, that 3% is what is budgeted, so that is about 83,000 for current employees. But if I try to increase, let's say, those wages to that proposed table that I was playing around with, the increase comes to over $30,000 for incumbents and another $25,000 for vacant positions. That's over the 83,000, so that's in addition to. So that's what is that, an additional $55,000, which is not budgeted.
Okay, so 3%.
So 3% is what is budgeted.
Well, yeah, and I got it.
Okay.
I got it. So, let me just see something real quick. So what you're saying is, like, I'm just using an example, of someone that's at 1882 right now, they would go with a 3%, they would go to 1938, which is a 3% raise.
Yeah,
And then anyone hired in would be at 1882.
correct.
Okay. Again, for the record, that's not really our problem, that's more of a management problem, because you're going to be the one struggling to hire people, right? That's how we feel, you
Yeah.
know?
Which is
Uh,
why I will say, we really, and Thaddeus was supportive, he worked with me on this. You could, I'll just turn this around real quick, you can see all those numbers, all of, it goes all the way
It's a
this
blur
way.
from
I
here, but
can't,
yeah.
yeah, but with what we're working with, there's not room to increase the wage table.
Yeah, I mean, I've had conversations with Thaddeus. I'm not gonna get used to that, okay? I've called you Mr. Davenport since I met you. So, I just, hear that, and my concern is not so much existing employees, because 3% is something that we'd be, comfortable with on our side, right? I think the existing employees, I don't know about let me check
So
something.
for you
Before I say
guys,
that.
and raising bus rates, and this is where we run into the problem, it's not just raising that bottom rate. Because you have the table, it raises all of those rates. So
Oh.
then you have to apply that
The
to,
progression,
correct,
yeah,
yeah,
and-
so
and-
that's where it would cost me, I'm just throwing out a number, but let's say $50,000 to raise starting wages for the vacant positions.
yeah.
But to apply that to the progression and apply it to the rest of the union, we were looking at around, is that the 115 number I gave you? I think it was the 115.
So, I mean,
So-
this goes back to the original negotiations back before we signed the contract in 2023. I just, while it took so long to get a contract, if we had done it the way Mass Transit, which I know Mr. Davenport, Thaddeus, is used to seeing, in transit industry, we're used to a 5-year progression, and that's what people get, and you adjust the progression. You don't adjust wages, you adjust the progression. So when there's an increase, it adjusts that. And, but we're not there, obviously.
Yeah, and
That's
so-
kind of out the window.
So the county, again, we have the money to do current incumbents, the money's just not there to adjust for the vacancies, even with budget cutting, the number of vacancies they're cutting, there's still vacancies that if you increase that wage table, I think just that base rate on the vacancies that remaining come to around $35,000 increase on just vacant positions if you increase the wage table.
Okay. I won't deny that, from my perspective, as the union president, I'm disappointed because 2387 is the top rate for those fellow employees that are currently in that progression. That's the most they're gonna reach if they get to that 2387. And, to me, I think that's a low number. That's not industry standards for a professional bus operator. I don't know, but of course, you're gonna be adjusting them year after year when you give them an additional raise and adjusting their existing raise, right? So they'll end up like us at some point, where they're above that 2387 because we've gotten raises every year, right? I'm not saying we can't live with that, I'm just saying that, it makes it hard for them to see the end when they're looking as a new employee, where am I gonna be at? But, I kind of worry for your side of being able to hire people, because I've watched people come and go during training. Mr. Davenport, you gotta agree with me on this one. I've watched you put people through training, and then they go, see ya, and they walk away for various reasons, whether some say it's wages, some say it's the schedules that they have to work. Some come in and they see what we actually do. Debbie, I look forward to you maybe coming and watching what we do and see what we do. They're shocked to see the responsibility that we actually have as bus operators, but in technicians. The skill the technicians have is amazing, to deal with the fleet they have. But I don't think the union's gonna walk away from a 3% raise, okay? We're not gonna do that. I mean, 2%, I was a little kind of like, not happy, right? We weren't happy. We think we work hard enough to at least get a 3%. And so we're pleased that you all found that in the budget. I'm not gonna say we aren't. I am worried about people that are below the top people that are making the top wage. I am worried about them a little bit, how they're gonna feel. I noticed like after they get this 3% raise, and then they move in the progression, they move 1 penny when they reach their, 1 penny when they reach that time in that month of service, they're gonna be like, a penny, really? But, you know, the other progression that I saw on the screen when I got this, I was excited because I thought you guys were
We
actually.
were excited, but it's not gonna work.
I got it, you know, I was excited for those that are existing in the progression and those that would be coming in the door, you know. Even though I still think 1997 is a little low for this industry. And I know I emphasize that all the time about the industry, but, you know, it is a job that is not what people think. A lot of people think you just drive. You gotta have a lot of skills. You deal with people every day. You deal with all types of people, okay? And it's hard sometimes. I just came from a safety meeting the other day with Rashad, and we were talking about this exact issue of how we deal with individuals. And we were discussing how you deal with so many different personalities. It's not easy to have the same personality for every person, because you gotta be careful what you say. And sometimes, you know, it's not a friendly moment for us, but, so 3%, that's what you have on the table. So if, I guess I'll wait before I say this other thing, before I go to the other thing I wanna talk about, I want him to hear that. I mean, I think the 3% pushes some of the individuals to, like in maintenance department, you're pushing them into a much better wage scale for the skill they have being technicians. I do think your wage rate for a cleaner, a starting cleaner, is exactly what I hear Commissioner May say on the dais when he talks about, we
Is
gotta.
that the utility worker, is that what you call a utility worker? Because I don't have a cleaner.
It's a utility worker / cleaner, it's, you know, they service buses
Just
when they
want
come
to
in.
make sure I have the right
Right.
position.
I just know the position he holds more than he is see, in my eyes, a utility worker's the one when the bus comes in at night, they check the oil, they check the fluids, they clear out the fare box, they do all the things, they check to see if there's any defects on the bus, and they move it to the maintenance department if there's defects that need to be worked on. A cleaner is one that's cleaning the bus, but they've kind of combined them to do everything, they're training them to do everything. And so that rate of pay of 15, let me think, for 1549, I think it is pretty concerning, because as I was saying, Commissioner May, I've heard him on the dais talk about, you know, we don't want to be a place where people come to work and they're living and they're going for food stamps and whatnot and services because they can't live. And again,
How many?
I know that Marcus has told me, this is the cleaner I'm talking about, he hopes he can stay, but he doesn't know if he can make it with this kind of pay. I think that pay is a little low. I think-
There probably would be some room in the budget to move that wage table, simply because there's only 3 people in those positions and there's no vacancies.
Well, only one of them is in a dire strait of pay. The other two, the other one's making top pay.
And I say that there is going to be some movement in the custodial salaries, so we could make that probably equivalent and update that wage table.
On
There
that.
would- I could probably get a little movement from budget on that, simply because there's only 3 employees. I think when it comes to the bus operators, that's 43 employees that we're talking about, plus your 8 vacancies, and that's why that costs so much money.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm not saying you have to adjust the entire progression on their existing progression, because of the 3 people, 2 of them are making a decent, I mean, when the middle person gets her raise, she'll be making just shy of $18 an hour. And the top guy's making 21, because he's got years of service. And he's at top rate, plus he's gotten existing raises. It's the guy at the bottom that's the one that I'm afraid you're gonna lose, and anyone coming after him. He's actually replaced
And
somebody that
generally-
quit.
Generally,
correct?
when you have a wage progression, you kind of shift the whole thing.
And I'm
That's
okay.
why-
I'm fine with that.
So,
I'm just making the point. The other, and I wanna go on the record, that's why I'm saying some of these things. You know, when you're not adjusting our starting wage as a bus operator and leaving it at $18.82, that's concerning. And I will just say this, Nikki, as you know, I talk to every new employee that walks in the door, because I'm trying to talk to them. I meet with them in orientation, and I meet with them one-on-one about the union or whatever. And I will tell you that the new hires have expressed, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them right now, and all 5 of them expressed to me $18.82. They're only hanging in there based on these wage negotiations. And, you know, I'm not saying they're gonna leave, but all 5 expressed concern at that rate. They said it was a very low rate to come in, and, you know, some of them came, here's the other thing about that group that came in. They all came in with experience. They all came from other places. I mean, you got Tammy Ferguson came from Sarasota, transit. You got Patricia, who came from Michigan, driving a bus up there. You got Taylor, who drove a bus in Santa Rosa County. You got,
let me ask you a question.
well, I'm trying to get to a point, hold on. It's not like you're hiring someone off the street and then training them and giving them a CDL. These folks are showing up to the property with skills. You just gotta teach them the routes and teach them your rules and policies. But as far as driving a vehicle that size, they've been doing it. And so I'm only saying to you, on your side, what I've heard from them. You know, one of them is, I hope she doesn't leave. You know, I just hope she doesn't leave. But you're gonna push her to 1938 with a 3%. And, okay, we'll see how that goes. Again, I'm not gonna, you know, if you say you got $83,000, that's what you got. And we can go from there, but I think, I just think that the problem's more on your side, not ours. My side is trying to tell you, when you had that second progression that I saw on the screen, we were ready to say, let's talk, we're ready, we think this is gonna work. And, but it's not there, and you were right. And you're always right. So, the other thing is you got, and I'm just adding this in for discussion, we've got a pilot program that's out there, and at some point that pilot program will end, and if you decide to take them in-house, we're gonna be discussing that wage rate of a non-CDL employee. I think they're making 16 and change now, right? And we're gonna be discussing, I can tell you, I've talked to many of them, and they have told me personally, they can't, they're just hopeful for the pilot program to end so they can become county employees, fall under the union, get benefits, negotiate a more living wage, right? And, but when you're still at $18.82 for a starting rate of a bus operator with a CDL, that's a problem. And you're gonna find yourself with a lot of high turnover rate at some point with those individuals. You're gonna try to keep them down there at a $16, $17 raise, which, by the way, ITL has gone now 2 years without a raise. ITL is not giving those poor drivers over there a raise in 2 years. And he's not even communicating to the union anymore, so I'm a little frustrated there. I'm very proud of the workforce at ECAT. Debbie, right? I don't wanna say, I feel like saying Ms. Bowers, but Debbie, I'm trying to be respectful because of your
Thank you.
position.
Yeah.
But I just want you to know, since you're coming in as the new assistant administrator over that department, you know, I've been there 30 years, and I'll tell you, I'm very proud of a lot of my coworkers. They put in a lot of hours to help keep that system going, and you know, some people say, well, you're getting paid overtime. Yeah, well, overtime's great. Obviously, some of us, we like overtime. But it's more than that. You're taking away from your family. You're taking away from your private life. You're spending your, Michael Brooks, we joked about him when he got here, where's his uniform on? Because it's usually on his back, his uniform. They go out there and move this community every day. And they are really, I hope the county understands that these professional CDL drivers are the best. Yes, there are mistakes out there, and there's no doubt about that. We're gonna deal with a grievance here after this, but you know, based on an accident, there's gonna be accidents, unfortunately. But there's some of us out there that, you know, and I'm one of them, I'm gonna brag and say, never had a preventable accident in my career, right? I'm not just the only one, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of us. And the ones that have had, some that have had preventable accidents, minor little accidents. You know, and compared to the hours they put in, you know, so I can't emphasize to you how professional these folks are. They're skilled. They're out there moving those buses. So when we're getting these wages to where we're getting them, I'm pleased to see the top people getting to where they should be, which I think is industry wages. I'm right there, you're right, you're getting close. Not quite there, but you're there, you're getting close, and I'm not gonna argue that. I just worry about those coming in, that's all. And, Elaine, Mike, you got anything you wanna add?
I only wanna say, if we're offering 3%, I'm all for it. I hope the union accepts a 3% offer, you know, so, I don't know where we going with it, but it'll be some happy employees and happy drivers, you know, to take that 3%. And I don't want us not to take it and the other county employees get a 3% raise, and then we still be negotiating with the county for 5 more years like we did before. So, you know, I'm hoping that we take the 3%, that we can agree on that and just make everybody happy.
Yeah, I think I came in and told you, we're not angry, we're happy to see 3% gone from 2%. We're there. Again, I just wanna go on record, I'm worried about y'all and new
Yeah.
hires and existing employees that are not at top rate. I'm more concerned about whether you maintain.
This is what I was gonna ask you a minute ago. We might have to do some wheeling and dealing with Stefan. Would you be opposed, and this is just a thought, would you be opposed to removing that beginning rate, going to a 4-step progression with the starting being at the 1997 is the second
1997.
one,
You mean take off a year,
basically?
and what would be the steps?
It would be the
1997?
1997, the 2120, 2249, and 2387.
Whoa,
We don't
slow down.
change,
You
don't change the progression, you just take off that first.
take off that first step,
Yeah.
so it'd be 1997, 2020, 2120, 2249, 2387.
You give up one more position, I think I
What's that? That was a whisper. That's it.
can get
That wasn't meant for me, was it? God, I knew I
you.
should have.
I gotta wheel and deal some positions, but
So,
that
so
way-
if it goes to 1997, let me just look, here's my question. If we're gonna go to 1997, that's what you're changing, that's, if
Yeah.
we're going to a 4-year progression,
I
not
have
5.
to run that past budget, but I'm
I
asking
understand.
you today what
I
your
understand.
thoughts are before I
Okay,
go through.
my question is, with the 3% raise, the existing, which I think there are 5 of them, let me see, 6 of them, there's 6 employees, one's just a penny difference after the 3% raise. You would adjust those 5 up to 1997, because they're, with the raise, they'll be at 1938, is Is that correct?
So the proposal would be, however we write the proposal, so it would be they're brought up
They,
and then you get 3%, or 3% and then you bring your wage table up?
I would do the 3%, and then
Right.
based on the new agreed upon progression, you adjust them to the
So you're
beginning
saying
rate.
like,
To the beginning rate based on their months of service.
basically, just bring them to 1997,
Correct.
because they're already
It's-
getting more than 3%, basically.
Well, they would
Yes.
end up getting more
I
than
agree
most
with you.
people, yes.
I
they
agree
would.
with you.
But if we're trying to
Agree,
get
Mike.
qualified people into ECAT, yeah. Is that something you would be interested in? No?
Sure. Have that up there.
Yeah, 'cause you said we have to lose a position.
And on our side, we're going from, on our, you would go from a 5-year progression back down to a 4. Okay?
For now, I mean, if we ever see that we're getting revenue, or we see that there's money coming in, or there's money available, we can discuss, but I very quickly did the math, so I don't wanna make any
Same.
promises, but very quickly did the math and said, I think if we take a position from him, we might be able to, what's happening? We might be able to do that, and then that doesn't change your whole table.
You do have to, I just saw something, you do have to adjust trolley drivers too, not much. 1 cent.
Do I?
With the 3%, they go to 1996, it would go to 1997, so.
Are those are those temporary or?
They're part-time.
They're talking about our progression right here, they're talking about the old progression. They would eliminate this, and then would be a 4-year progression starting here, that would be 0 to 12 here, 1997, and then the others would adjust down. And it would stop, it would be 37 to 48 plus, and take that out.
But that they won't reach us.
Oh,
Goes already.
oh.
Oh, you don't think so?
Let me just check something. But yeah, well, the top would be 23, so.
Them the ones coming in.
Coming
not
out,
us.
Labor Day, I don't know, not us, you know, we're above that.
So,
No, but he wouldn't be here, he'd be here. That's the
but that's
top.
where he'll be at.
Let me look his name.
Do y'all wanna
No, he-
caucus?
No, we got it, real quick.
Okay.
That's where he'll be at.
He'd be above it, he'd be like all of us, he'd be above that top rate.
And that's Kane, right?
Yeah, he'd be the only
Okay,
one.
so you
Well,
said,
you had it
they
for a
still
minute,
will be
didn't you?
going back right here.
I was like,
Yeah.
no, I haven't.
Yeah,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so,
Okay, so if I can work that out with budget, I'll see, what I'll do is maybe just, since we've talked about it, if I can work it out with budget, then I'll have the draft written and send it to you.
so when we do the MOU, I'd like to ask one thing, okay? Not just say 3% across the board. It would also show the adjusted progression, right? As of this effective date, which I'm assuming is the first pay period in October, would be the adjusted new progression, correct? And that would be the reasoning of you having to adjust the other people, because that, you know what I'm saying? They would get 3% first pay period of October, and then you show that we agreed to an adjusted progression, and because those people were below it, you would agree that in the MOU that they get adjusted.
The the bottom
It would be. the
Correct.
first-
people, yeah.
Correct, the people at the bottom,
It would be the first 4 pay period.
the
Not-
first full.
First full pay period after
Right.
ratification.
Not the
yeah.
first pay period. But I also would like you to reference something that I just want to have it on record, which is we would reference an email you would send prior to the first full pay period in October, which will list existing employees, their previous wage rate, and then the 3% and their new pay rate. I just want to have that as record, that they went from 24.59 to 25.33.
So like after we implement the 3%, you want a copy of the before and after report?
In the MOU, I want you to say,
No, we don't put employee names in MOUs.
I don't want the names. I want you to reference an email that was sent to the union stating effective the first pay period in October, we have adjusted all existing employees, and that email shows what it is. And when we get it, we'll have, just like you just sent us, that.
It's just gonna be our standard, we're not gonna put that in MOU, it's gonna be our standard language of effective blah, 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 go get the 3%, and then here's the new wage table. We're not gonna put that in an MOU. I'm happy to send you a report,
Okay,
but we won't,
Okay.
that language doesn't go
That's what
in
I got,
an
you were
MOU.
asking for, at that time, you want to have a report sent.
yeah, showing the
So, yeah,
existing
show
wage,
your-
the,
okay.
Yeah,
the
I'm happy to
existing
send you a
wages.
report, but we're not gonna
I just-
reference it in an MOU.
Yeah, I
That's not
don't
what an
wanna
MOU
have
is
to
for.
come back and keep asking you, you know, what is this person making? You know what I'm saying? I wanna be able to follow it ourselves, because, again, you know, when they get a raise that's for existing employees only, it's different than what the progression is, and it kind of, I mean, when I looked down here and I saw some of the folks, I was like, wow, I didn't realize they were at that wage rate. That one's kinda strange, you know? Didn't know they were at that.
Cause they got 3%, 2%, 4%.
Right, whatever.
Whatever.
And so I didn't even know what they were at. So I'm just asking, okay. So I guess that sounds like once you go to budget, we'll be close. And we can sign off and
Yeah.
we can try to
It
ratify.
sounds like
I
you'd
will-
be happy with 3% if that's all we can do.
Mhm.
But if I can finagle this, maybe get rid of this bottom wage and just go to a 4-tier with everything else remaining the same, that would be even better.
Yeah, and
Okay.
sounds like we're there. The only thing I will, and again, I did this last meeting, I'll say it one more time. I'm doing it for my own members that actually listen to these recordings. Again, last year, you guys gave a 3% across the board. It wasn't negotiated, you know, and I know in the future, you're going to make sure that that's not gonna happen, because we feel like we lost a wage reopener because of it. You know, if I was standing firm here, I'd be arguing that this
And
is
if
for
you- and
last
if
year's
this-
wage.
This conversation today, I really think kind of shows you why we just said, push the 3%, because it's really not enough to even
I
do
understand,
anything with. And
but-
there wasn't anything additional last year either.
but I think it's important that you pull your unions aside before you actually implement that and talk to us and make sure we understand that this is what we're gonna give you. Even if we have a wage reopener, you're not gonna get anything else, you know, or whatever. And the only reason I say that is because depending on the union, they might say, well, you know what, we want 4% for this person, 2% for this group, you know what I'm saying? And adjust it the way they want it to fit, depending on the wage scale. But, we're on board with the 3% right now.
Okay.
And I'm very happy that you tried to, at least tried to adjust that starting rate. I hope that brings you a few people, Mr. Davenport.
See what I can,
That is.
see what we can do.
That is. Yeah, I can't get used to you calling me Mike. Mr. Lowry.
But if he
So-
does, we're gonna put quarter jars all around, so that every time someone says Mr. or Miss, they have to put a quarter in the
We don't
jar.
carry cash, you know, we don't wanna get
Oh,
robbed.
okay.
Okay, we don't
Do you have
carry
anything
cash.
else you
But
want to
y'all
say?
can throw, I think y'all will be able to throw a big party.
Do you have anything else you want to say on the record?
Yeah, I will say one
Alright.
last thing.
Oh, okay.
We've been told that Mr. Mr. Davenport is going to be our, hopefully, permanent.
Well, we are with the change in leadership with Debbie,
Mhm.
we're gonna do some things different. We're gonna do some things different, so.
I don't know what that means, but
Mr.
start-
Davenport, maybe
starting with
without
first name
regular
basis,
or-
huh?
I mean, I will tell you, because you will see it, and, that is not discussed, that we are gonna post the position, just so that that's how, I've done it with all my departments, even though some of them have gotten
Post the position.
the director position.
Oh,
And Thaddeus will be applying for it, and then,
oh, so what
But
was
we didn't
reported in
wanna-
our meeting is not correct.
Things change just that quick.
Okay.
I'm a
But
little
you
different.
already introduced as the director.
Yeah, that's just,
We
you know, the
already
employees.
said you and welcome you.
All right, so this
So I wanna-
conversation
this is
doesn't
the-
need to be on the record.
Okay,
go ahead and
It's
shut
a
it off.
wage opener, so if you have anything else to say about wages, otherwise I'm gonna go ahead and turn off the recorder.
No, I think we're close, and I think you'll get back to us pretty quickly on wages, correct?
Thank you.
That's the plan.